2, we're looking at parts of speech. So this is a continuation. If you remember from lesson 1 that there are 8 parts of speech. In our last lesson, we looked at nouns and pronouns. In lesson 2, we're going to take a look at verbs and adjectives. Now, we're going to start with the verb. The verb is an important word in the sentence. The verb is what I call the heart of a sentence. If you do not have a verb in your sentence, then it's not a complete thought, and it isn't a sentence. So let's take a look at this important word that's in a sentence, and that's the verb. Now, a verb, when we break down its definition, is a word that expresses action. Not only does it express action, but another part of the definition is it links another word back to the subject. Now, going along with this definition, there's also a third part to it, but they kind of go together, and that it indicates existence. So, a verb expresses action. It links words back to the subject, and also indicates existence or state of being. All right, we're going to take a look at the verb. We're going to take a look at some examples of sentences with verbs and just break down what the definition of the verb is. Now, let's take a look at the first one. A verb is a word that expresses action. Now, when we think of action, we think of 2 kinds of action. We think of what we call a physical action and a mental action. Things that we do, things we can see when we're doing, expressing action, and things that cannot be seen. So let's take a look at some verb examples when we think of physical action. Well, we think of speak, swallow, preach. Those are just 3 examples of physical action. Now, let's take a look at express an action mentally. We have believe, ponder, realize. And those are just some examples of mental action. When it comes to verbs, there are many words in our English language that express action, physical action or mental action. Now, let's take a look at them in a sentence. Dad built a log cabin. Short sentence, but it's to the point, and it expresses an action verb. Dad built a log cabin. In this sentence, the action is built. That is the verb in the sentence. If we take the verb out of the sentence, listen, Dad, a log cabin, does not express any idea at all, right? It's not a complete sentence. So as I said before, the verb is the heart of the sentence. You need a verb to have a complete thought. Let's take a look at another example. We ate dinner at 5 p.m. Action word, ate. Physical action. Again, if we take it out of the sentence, we dinner at 5 p.m., not a complete thought. The verb is the heart of the sentence. It's the action. It tells what the subject is doing. We ate. It tells what the subject is doing. Dad built. Let's take a look at one more. The choir sang. The choir sang one of my favorite hymns. Well, what's the action in that sentence? The choir is the subject. What is the choir doing? What action? What is the verb? And the verb is sang. And again, take it out of the sentence, and the choir, one of my favorite hymns, doesn't express a complete thought. Sang is the verb. It's the heart of the sentence. It expresses action. We took a look at some sentences that express physical action. Now let's take a look at a couple of sentences that show mental action. Example, Ken pondered over the passage in Proverbs. What is the action? It's not a physical action, but there is a mental action, and that is pondered. Ken pondered over the passage in Proverbs. Pondered is the verb, and it's expressing a mental action in the sentence. And one more. The student realized he left his assignment at home. Now, in this sentence, actually we have two verbs. We have action verbs. One is a mental action and one is a physical action. Well, let's look at the mental one. He realized. All right, the student realized. The next verb is left. And left is an action verb as well, and it's a physical action. He left his assignment at home. So in this particular sentences, we have two action verbs, one being physical and one being mental. So that explains the part of the definition that expresses action. Now let's go on and take a look at some examples that shows links words to the subject, and I'm going to put them together because in a sense they do go together. It indicates existence, state of being. So let's take a look at the second part of our definition. So a verb is a word that expresses action. It can be physical, it can be mental. And now let's take a look at links words. When we think of the verb, and the most common linking verb in our English language is the irregular verb of be. Be is a verb, and it links and also indicates existence. And let's take a look at the many forms of be. We have be, being, being. Also we have am, is, are, was, and were. So, those are the forms of be. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, being. And this goes with this part of the definition of a verb. Now, let's look at some sentence examples that explain that. One example. The coffee was hot. actors are on stage. Let's take a look at those two. In this sentence, we have was. Was is the linking verb. And for this part of the definition, it is linking the word hot to coffee. The coffee was hot. Was is the linking verb. It's linking hot, which describes coffee. All right, next example, are. The actors are on stage. Are is a linking verb, and this is the second part of the definition. It indicates existence or state of being, and it just tells the location of the actors. So state of being, state of existence. Let's look at another example. Dawn is a skillful pilot. Is a little word, but it is a linking verb. Dawn is a skillful pilot. In this example, can you figure out what it's linking this time? It's linking pilot to Dawn. In a sense, it's identifying who Dawn is. Dawn and pilot are the same person. So is a form of be, a linking verb that links words to the subject. Now, when we think of linking verbs, we think of the form be, am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been. But there are also other words that can be used to express linking or existence, and we call those the sense verbs. And we have to be careful when we use the sense verbs. Sense verbs can also be used as an action verb, and also can be used as a linking verb. So let's take a look at other verbs, what we call the sense verbs, that are used as linking verbs. Keep in mind, we have am, is, are, was, were, be, being, being. And that is always a linking verb. Now, let's take a look at some verbs that we class as the sense verbs that can also be used as linking. When we think of our senses, we think of taste, smell, feel, look, seem, we have appear. We also have remain. Become is another one. Sound is another one. Grow is another one. And stay. Now, those are the most commonly used sense verbs that are also used as linking verbs, and there are others. But we're going to take a look at some of these as examples. Let's take a look at them being used as a linking verb. The cookies look delicious. The verb look. Look is used as a linking verb. It's a sense verb because it is linking delicious to cookies. Delicious is describing it. Let's look at another one. The chicken dish tasted spicy. In this example, tasted is a linking verb. It's the sense verb. It is linking spicy back to dish. It's describing dish. Let's look at another one. The bell sounded ominous. Sounded is the verb, and it is a linking verb. It's linking ominous to bell. Ominous is describing bell. So these verbs in these sentences are used as a linking verb, and they are our sense verbs. Now, let's take a look at using these verbs, but not as a sense verb, because they can also be used as an action verb. The woman looked for the lost coin. Looked is a verb, but it's being used as an action because the woman is actually performing the action. Woman looked. Therefore, in this sentence, it's an action verb, not a linking verb, not a sense verb. Let's look at another example. We tasted the chicken dish. Tasted in this example is an action verb. Why? We are doing the tasting. We tasted the chicken dish. It's not being used as a linking verb. So when you're using these verbs and you're trying to decide whether it's used as a linking verb or an action verb, see who's doing the action. If someone is doing the action, then these verbs are used as an action verb. And another way to test it is substitute am, is, are, was, or were in the sentence. If you can substitute it and it makes sense, then it's being used as a sense verb. Example, the woman is for the lost coin. No, doesn't make sense. We are the chicken dish. No, it doesn't make sense. Now, let's go back to another example. Let's see. The roses smell sweet. All right, smell. All right, let's see. Is this an action verb or is it a linking verb? Well, ask yourself. Roses. Do roses do the smelling? Are they performing the action? No. The roses smell sweet. It's linking sweet to roses, which is describing it. We could substitute am, is, are, was, were. The roses are sweet, and it makes sense. Therefore, the sense verb smell is being used as a linking verb. So that's the second part of our definition. Links words to the subject, indicates existence or state of being. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, being are the most commonly used linking verbs, as well as the sense verbs, taste, smell, feel, look, see, appear, remain, become, sound, grow, stay. And as I said, there are others that can be used, but those are the most commonly used ones. Again. So just back up in your note, and let's go back and take a look at the action verbs. The definition, a verb is a word that expresses action. We have our physical action. On your handout, you have swallow, speak, build, eat, sing. Mental action, you have believe, ponder, consider, hope, realize. Also, verbs can be used as linking verbs. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, being are the most common forms of the verb be, and it is a linking verb. Also, you have your sense verbs, and take a look at your handout. You have taste, smell, feel, look, remain, appear, seem, become, sound, grow, and stay. Now, let's continue on looking at verbs. That's the definition of a verb. But sometimes a verb is made up of more than one word. Verbs working together can form a verb phrase. Now, a verb phrase can have a main verb plus what we call helping verbs. Now, for the helping verbs, there might be one or more helping verbs. So a verb phrase, two or more words working together as one. It's made up of a main verb and it's made up of a helping verb. Let's take a look at an example. The ship was captured by pirates. Verb, main verb is captured. What's working with it? Was. We have a verb phrase in this sentence. The ship was captured by pirates. Captured is the main verb. And was is what we call the helping verb. Another example. We have finished our assignment. All right, can you pick out the verb phrase in this one? Think of an action verb and another verb working with it. Have finished. We have finished our assignment. Finished is the main verb. Have is the helping verb. And let's take a look at another example that maybe has more than one helping verb. Uncle Joe will be driving us to the airport. All right, what's the main verb? What's the action? Driving. What's working with driving? Will be. In this example, we have three verbs working together as one. The main verb is driving. The helping verbs are will and be. So verb phrases consist of a main verb and one or more helping verbs, and they all work together as one word, one verb. Take a look at your handout. On your handout, we have a list of commonly used helping verbs. Follow as I read the lists. You'll notice in the first ones, we are looking at our linking verb, and the forms of it can be used as a helping verb. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, being. Those can be used as helping verbs, and we see that in our examples. Other examples of verbs that are helping verbs, and again, some of these can be used by themselves, and some of them can be used with a main verb and be a helping verb. Have, has, had. Do, does, did. Shall, will, should, would. May, might, must, can, could. And those are just some of the examples of helping verbs, are the most commonly used helping verbs. And as I said before, some of those can be used on their own just as a main verb. Some of them are linking and some of them are action. Let's take a look at the sentences again. So we have was as the helping verb, had as a helping verb, will and be are the helping verbs. Now, if you notice in the sentence examples, what is the location usually of the main verb? When you have a verb phrase, the main verb is usually at the end of the verb phrase. The helping verbs usually precede the main verb in a verb phrase. So that's basically the location of them. Now, not always. In some sentences, especially a question, an interrogative sentence, it can be turned around. And let's take a look at an example of that. An example of an interrogative sentence. An interrogative sentence is a sentence that asks a question, and when you have an interrogative sentence, the word order of your subjects and verbs are usually out of order. Example. Question mark. All right, question. Will you help me with the homework? In this sentence, we do have a verb phrase. We have a main verb, which is an action verb, help, and we have a helping verb, will. Will you help me with the homework? Notice that the subject you is interrupting it. So most often in your verb phrase, you have your helping verb, and then you have your main verb, but sometimes when you're asking a question, the verb phrase is broken up. Also, there is another word or part of speech that can break up a verb phrase. Now, we haven't done this part of speech yet. We will be doing it, and that's the adverb. Sometimes an adverb can separate a verb phrase, but when we look at the adverb, we'll take a look at that for the sentence order of the verb phrase. So verbs express action or links words to the subject, indicates existence or state of being. Remember, the verb is the heart of the sentence, it's the important part of the sentence for it to be a complete thought. Moving on, we're going to take a look at our next part of speech, and that's the adjective. Now, the adjective is important because an adjective can add color, it adds description, it makes more definite the noun that it's describing. And that's what adjectives do. Adjectives are words that describe. You'll notice in your handout, we are taking a look at letter D, adjectives. And the definition is an adjective is a word that modifies or describes a noun or a pronoun. So, adjectives. Describe, or we use the term modify, a noun, or a pronoun. Adjectives make our writing interesting because it just adds extra to that noun or to that pronoun. Let's take a look at an example. All right, let's use the noun sky. We can add an adjective to make it what kind of sky? Cloudy. Oh, let's see, blue sky. Cloudy is making sky a little more descriptive, more definite. Therefore, we say it's modifying the noun sky. Again, blue, adding color, blue sky. It's modifying sky, telling what kind of sky. Let's take a look at some other examples. Let's use the noun people. All right, let's definitely make it. And now we have two people. Two is an adjective and it's modifying people. Let's see. Take a look at your handout. We have another one with options. And let's add a different one. Let's do many options. Options is a noun. Many is an adjective. And it's modifying options. Now, if you think back when we were doing pronouns, when we listed pronouns, many can be also used as a pronoun. You'll find that in our English language, that many words in our English language can be used in more than one way for a part of speech. And when we get through the 8 parts of speech, we're going to take a look at how you can identify. You have to look at the word and how it's being used. Even though many can be a pronoun, in this example, it's being used as an adjective. It's describing options. Other example of pronouns that can be used as an adjective are those apples. You remember the word those was a demonstrative pronoun. Well, in this example, it's not being used as a pronoun, it's being used as an adjective, describing apples. Another example is that candidate. That is also a demonstrative pronoun, but in this example, it's being used as an adjective. It's identifying candidate, that candidate. Another example, his. Puppy. Puppy is the noun. His is saying whose puppy it is. Remember we looked at his when we looked at the personal pronouns, his, her, their, theirs, mine. In this example, it's being used as an adjective. It's identifying which puppy. And another, excuse me, an example. Let's take a look at Hannah's Bible. In a sense, Hannah's a girl's name, it's a noun. Bible is a noun. Both of those are proper nouns. But notice it's possessive. It has an apostrophe S. In this example, Hannah's is being used as an adjective, a proper adjective, because it has a capital letter and it's being used as an adjective, so we call that a proper adjective. You can make proper adjectives from proper nouns, and we'll look at that in a moment. So those are all examples of adjectives that describe or modify a noun. Cloudy sky, blue sky, 2 people, many options, those apples, that candidate, his puppy, Hannah's Bible. Now when we think of adjectives, and to help us identify if a word is acting as an adjective, we think about questions that adjectives can answer about the nouns that they modify. And if you take a look at your handout, you'll see there in the 3rd characteristic that they can answer 3 questions, mainly 3. There is a 4th. What kind, how many, which one, or whose. Now, this one answers whose about the noun it describes. His puppy. This one answers whose about the noun it describes. Many options, 2 people, they are answering the question with how many. And then we have what kind. Cloudy sky, blue sky. And then which one, those apples, that candidate. So adjectives can answer questions about the nouns they modify, and if you keep in mind those questions that adjectives can answer, that will help you in the future identify whether a word is acting as an adjective or another part of speech. So these answer the questions, what kind? All right. These answer the questions, how many? These 2 answer the question, which one? And these answer the question, whose? Adjectives. Adjectives are words that describe or modify a noun or a pronoun. Adjectives can answer one of the 4 questions. What kind, how many, which one, and whose. So adjectives make our writing interesting. Most often, if you'll notice in these examples, that the adjective will precede or come before the noun that they describe, but not always. In some cases, it might follow the noun it modifies, and when we think, think of linking verbs, adjectives may also follow the linking verb, and we looked at that when we looked at linking verbs. Remember the example, the coffee was hot. Hot was modifying coffee. Hot is an adjective. So let's take a look at some examples where an adjective may not always come before the noun that it describes. Most often it does, but not always. Let's look at some sentence examples on the board showing adjectives not immediately following or not immediately coming before the noun that they modify. When you have a sentence, now that you know what a verb is, to help you identify the other parts of speech in a sentence, I suggest you always find the verb first. So in sentence number 1, Peter was impetuous. Let's find the verb. Now remember the definition of a verb. It expresses action or state of being. It's a linking verb. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, being. In number 1, the verb is was. Now, nouns. Peter is a noun. Peter is a proper noun. It has a capital letter. It's naming someone in particular. Impetuous. Impetuous is an adjective. And who is impetuous describing? Peter. So in that sentence, the adjective is following a linking verb, but it's still describing Peter. Sentence number 2, Doug, skilled and cautious, is an excellent driver. Again, let's find the verb in the sentence first. Is there an action verb or is it a linking verb? Is. And is the linking verb. Who or what is the sentence about? The noun is Doug. What words are describing Doug? Notice a location. Skilled is an adjective. Cautious, also describing Doug, is an adjective. What kind? Skilled. What kind? Cautious, describing Doug. Now, we have a linking verb, is, and remember the linking verb links a word back to the subject, and the word that it's linking is driver. But what part of speech is driver? Well, driver names, so that's a noun. But the noun driver also has modifiers. There's an adjective, actually 2 adjectives, that describes driver. What kind of driver? Excellent. And here we have the article an. An, a, and the are always adjectives. So an is also classed as an adjective, just like excellent is, and they are both modifying driver. So those 2 adjectives precede the noun they're describing, but in the first examples, skilled and cautious, it's following Doug. Notice the punctuation. We have skilled and cautious. Notice when it follows it, it's separated by commas. Doug, comma. Skilled and cautious, comma. So that's just a little writing technique to remember in proper punctuation. Now, let's go on to number 3. The long, slow drive was tiresome. Again, what is the verb? Action or linking was. All right, who or what is the sentence about? Well, the noun is drive. Here's an example that shows you that drive can be used as a noun, but also we can use drive as a verb showing action. But in this example, it's a noun. All right, what's describing drive? Well, first of all, we have 2 adjectives. Actually, 3 adjectives. The is the article describing drive. Slow is an adjective. Long is an adjective. And those are describing drive. What kind of drive? Long. What kind of drive? Slow. And then the is the article describing it as well. We have a linking verb, and we learned that modifiers follow linking verbs. So we do have another adjective that's describing drive. Tiresome is also an adjective. So in those sentences, it illustrates that most often adjectives will come before the noun that they're describing. But there are other times that adjectives will follow or be separate. And it's separated by a linking verb. So adjectives. Adjectives modify or describe a noun or a pronoun. They can answer one of four questions. What kind, which one, how many, whose. And when you're looking for an adjective, you can think of those questions to help you find them, especially when they're not right beside the noun. Now, as I said before, the articles a, an, and the are adjectives. They are the most commonly used adjective because we use them quite often in our writing. A and are what we call the indefinite articles. They are used in an indefinite way. They don't refer to anyone or anything in particular. Now, a is used before a word with a consonant sound. For example, a flower, a book, a pen. Whereas an is used before a word beginning with a vowel sound. All right. Whoops. All right. Used before a word beginning with a vowel sound. An ox, an hour, an apple. All right. So those are the indefinite articles, and then the is what we call the definite article. Most commonly used adjectives, the articles a, an, and the. A is used before a word that begins with a consonant sound, and an is used before a word beginning with a vowel sound. When you are identifying, when we have some assignments where you are identifying some parts of speech, don't forget that these three are always adjectives. The last characteristic that I want to take a look at about adjectives is, as I said before, you can form a proper adjective from a proper noun. For example, we think of the proper noun Asia, and it's a noun. I can make it into a proper adjective. Asian food. Now, Asia becomes an adjective, and it's describing food. Another example, Canada. I can make the proper noun, Canada, into a proper adjective. Border is the noun, okay? Which border, which one? Canadian. And now Canadian is a proper adjective. Whenever you make a proper noun into a proper adjective, it keeps the capital. And let's do one more. Not all of them will change form. Here's an example. We have Easter. Easter can also become a proper adjective without even changing its form. Easter parade. This time, Easter is being used as an adjective, talking about which one, which parade. Easter parade. So, proper nouns can be used as proper adjectives. So let's just review the characteristics of an adjective. An adjective is a word that modifies a noun or pronoun. It can answer the question which one, what kind, how many or much, and whose. You have the three most commonly used adjectives, and that's the articles a and the. Usually an adjective will come before the noun it describes, but it also can follow and be separated from the word it's modifying. You can make a proper noun into a proper adjective, and it still retains its capital. Now, we've gone through the first four parts of speech. We've looked at nouns, we've looked at pronouns, we've looked at verbs, and also adjectives. So we're going to take a look at some sentence examples, and we'll take a look at maybe a verse from the Bible, and let's just take a look at these different parts of speech and see if we can identify them by how they're used in the sentence. For our first sentence example in picking out the parts of speech, turn in your Bibles to Psalm chapter 37. We're going to take a look at verse 23. Psalm chapter 37 and verse 23. And God's word says, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way." As I said earlier, we're going to take a look at the parts of speech that we've covered so far. So we're going to look for nouns, pronouns, adjectives, and verbs. And I suggest that we start with the verbs. Sometimes if you can identify the verbs and then backtrack and find the other parts of speech, it is helpful. So listen for the verb. I'm going to read the verse again. "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way." Keep in mind, verbs can work together with other verbs and form a verb phrase. In verse 23, there is a verb phrase, and it is are ordered. Ordered is the main verb, are is the helping verb. Let's continue on. There's another verb. The verb is delighteth. Delighteth is an action verb. Ordered is an action verb, and then are is the helping verb. All right, let's see if we can find some nouns. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. The first noun, naming, steps. Another noun, naming, man. Another noun, proper noun, Lord. Another noun, naming, way. So there are our nouns, steps, man, Lord, way. And the only proper noun is Lord. All right, let's continue on. We've done the verbs, we've done the nouns. Let's do the adjectives. The article, modifying steps. A, good. Those are adjectives, modifying man. The, article, modifying Lord. His is an adjective. Now I know you might have thought, well, that's a pronoun. Well, true, it can be a pronoun, but in this verse it's being used as an adjective. His, modifying way. So we've got the adjectives, the, modifying steps, a, good, modifying man, the modifying Lord, his modifying way. All right, let's see if there are any pronouns in our verse. And there is a pronoun. Do you know which one it is? It is the pronoun he. Singular, masculine form. He. So in that verse, we have examples of both verbs, adjectives, nouns, and pronouns. Now let's take a look at some of the sentences that I have on the board. And let's do the same thing. Let's first find the verb. Let's find nouns, adjectives, and then pronouns. Now, we can take it one word at a time, or we can look at them in a certain order. I think I'd like us to find, thinking of the 4 parts of speech. So let's start with the verb. Jesus shows mercy to whoever comes to him. Remember, verbs express action or can be linking in your different forms of be as well as your sense verbs. Action verb, shows. Action verb, comes. And you'll notice neither one of those has any helping verbs, so just uses action verbs. All right, let's go and find nouns. Well, we know Jesus is a noun, a proper noun. We know mercy also is a noun. It's naming, and it's one of those abstract ones. Any other nouns? No, there are none. Let's go on to pronouns. Whoever is a pronoun. Remember, we talked about who, whose, which, and that as pronouns, the relative pronouns. They also can be pronouns if you add ever. Whoever, whomever, whichever, whatever, those are also pronouns. And this pronoun is beginning a subordinate clause, and we talked about the relative pronouns beginning a subordinate clause. So whoever is a pronoun. And there's another pronoun, and that is him. Him is referring to Jesus. Whenever you use pronouns that refer to God, make sure you capitalize those in your writing. So we have our nouns, we have our pronouns, we have the verb, and in this sentence example, there aren't any adjectives. Let's go on to number 2. She chose drapery which was washable. Again, let's find the verbs. Action or else linking. Chose is an action verb. Any other verbs? Yes, there is. We have a linking verb, was. And I'll just label that as an LV, as a linking verb. Any other verbs? No. And no verb phrases. All right, let's take a look at nouns. Nouns name people, places, things, or ideas. Noun, drapery. Any other nouns? No. Let's do pronouns. Pronouns take the place of nouns. She is a pronoun. And she is a personal pronoun. Feminine, singular. Another pronoun, you just spot it, and that's which. Which is also a pronoun. And that's one of those relative pronouns. Who, whose, whom, which, and that. Let's do adjectives. Well, you know you have a linking verb. So you know it's probably followed by an adjective. And this time it is. Washable is an adjective. Now, what is it linking it to? What is washable? Well, washable is modifying which. However, which is a pronoun, and it's taking the place of the noun drapery. So in the turn, the pronoun is identifying drapery. So washable is modifying which, and which is a pronoun, and the pronoun is referring to drapery. So just the one adjective. All right, number 3. Those are delicate roses. Let's find the verb, action or linking. Are is a linking verb. All right, nouns. Nouns name, people, places, things, ideas. Well, we have roses. Roses is a noun. Pronouns. Well, there is a pronoun. Remember, we have our special list of words that are used as pronouns. Those. Those is a demonstrative pronoun. Remember, there were 4, this, that, these, those. So those is a pronoun. All right, adjective. There is one. It's describing and it says what kind, and it's delicate. Delicate is modifying roses. What kind of roses? Delicate. Number 4, if anyone plans to attend, he should let us know. Verb, action, linking, form of be, plans is a verb. And it's an action verb. Now, attend is a verb, but it's not the main verb of the sentence, but we will label it. It's used in a different way, but it is a verb. We'll get into that when we get into sentence parts, because it's preceded by the word to. He should let us know. All right. Should is a verb, helping verb. Let is a verb, and it's a helper, it's a action verb. Now, know is also a verb, but again, it's used as a different type of sentence part. It's not the main verb. All right, now let's go on to nouns. Are there any nouns? No, there aren't any nouns. Let's go on to pronouns. There are pronouns. Anyone is a pronoun. Do you remember that long list of indefinite pronouns? Anyone is one of that. It's one of those from that list. Anyone is an indefinite pronoun. He is a pronoun. We've had that before, and it's a personal pronoun. Us is a pronoun, and it's also a personal pronoun. All right, adjectives. Anything describing the noun or the pronoun? No, there are no adjectives. There are the words, but we haven't come to those parts of speech yet. Number 5, we have an interrogative sentence. What should we eat for lunch? Let's find the verb. Now remember, in an interrogative sentence, if there is a verb phrase, then the verb phrase will be interrupted by another part of speech. Verb, eat. Action verb. What's working with it? What's helping eat? Should. And should is the helping verb. Let's go on to nouns. Lunch is a noun. It's naming. Any other nouns? No. Pronouns. What is a pronoun? Remember the interrogative list of pronouns? Who, whose, whom, which, and what? What is a pronoun? Being used as an interrogative pronoun. Another pronoun, we. We is a personal pronoun, plural, first person. Are there any adjectives? Not in that sentence. There are some other words, but that is not an adjective. So those are the first 4 parts of speech that we've done. Nouns are words that take the place. Nouns are words that name a person, place, thing, or an idea. Pronouns are words that take the place of a noun. A verb expresses action or is used as a linking verb. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being are the most commonly used linking verbs. And then we have adjectives. Adjectives describe or modify a noun or a pronoun. For our next class in lesson 3, I want you to do the handout. And this handout is very similar to what we have done on the board. In your in your handout, you have a series of sentences. And what you're going to do is you're going to find the verbs, the nouns, the pronouns, and the adjectives, and you are going to label them just like I had done on the board. So that in our next class, be prepared, have it finished, have them labeled, keeping in mind all the definitions of those 4 parts of speech. Have them labeled and just use the abbreviation as it shows at the top of the assignment and go through each of the sentences and label them. There will be words that you won't be able to label because there are other parts of speech in these sentences. But find the nouns, find the verbs, find the adjectives. Now, if you want to draw an arrow, you can, as I did, showing what the adjectives modify. But you don't have to. If you want to and that helps you, then do that. But remember, find the verb first and then go from there. So be ready. In the beginning of our lesson 3, we will take up those sentences and go over and identify the parts of speech for each one. Some of them you'll recognize, Bible references, and some of them are Bible-based. So think it through, remember the definition of each of those parts of speech, and identify as to what they are.